Hey cactus friends, it's Jenny from Cookie's Cacti. We are at the 1-year series finale of this Cactus Seed Soil Battle that we started on November 10th, 2023. And I was just confirming to make sure that that was true by looking at the dates that we wrote on these labels. 1 year. And that always brings up my existential crisis about how fast time is passing and all of that stuff that kind of makes my brain go haywire. But when it comes to growing cactus, plants, animals, anything that's living and growing, time is passing no matter what. So you might as well sow some seeds, because before you know it, they're going to be a year old, 2 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old. So as you can see, I have all my Astrophytum out here in the open, and I still have the Ariocarpus covered under the dome with shade cloth on it. And the dome has, let me take the shade cloth off. The dome has dials on them, and so the dials are wide open, but these are not huge holes in the dome, and I swear they seem to like it. I'm going to go ahead and take off this dome, and then we're going to go through the Astrophytum pots of seedlings and the Ariocarpus pots of seedlings. Then we'll go through the charts with both quantitative and some qualitative rankings. And then we'll talk about the giveaway. Let me take this dome off and then I'll come right back. Actually, I'm going to talk about the giveaway prize right now, and then we'll start going through all the pots of seedlings. So I'm going to give away all the pots of Astrophytum and Ariocarpus of the winning soil. And we can declare now officially that Coast Camanchaca won this seed soil battle. So I will be giving away all 3 pots of Astrophytum and the pot of Ariocarpus to 4 different winners. So each pot is 1 prize. And each winner will not only get a pot of seedlings, they will also get 1 packet of this year's Astrophytum hybrid harvest. So not only will you have a pot of seedlings, you'll get to grow them yourself. And each one of these winners will also get a random Ariocarpus seed pack. All 4 seed packs for Ariocarpus are different. So here's an example of one of the seed packs. So 4 winners, each with a pot of seedlings and a couple packs of seeds. So I will talk about the giveaway rules and instructions later on in the video. Let's go ahead and get started. As we usually do with all of these seed soil update videos, we're going to go through the seedlings pot by pot to show you what they look like at 1 year old. So as a recap of this experiment, we actually have 2 trays of seedlings. Tray number 1 now passed 1 year old. Tray number 2 we started 10 weeks later, so they are now 42 weeks old. In tray number 1, we started with 6 different types of soils. We did 3 pots of Astrophytum hybrid seeds that I harvested off of my own plant, and we sowed 25 seeds per pot. So 100% yield would be 75 seedlings total. For the Ariocarpus, same experiment, but we only had 1 pot per soil type. We also sowed 25 seeds per pot. So 100% yield on the Ariocarpus would be 25 seedlings. Then, because we had some question marks on some of the results we were seeing on tray number 1, we decided to try 6 more types of soils in tray number 2. So tray number 2, once again, was started 10 weeks later, so they are now 42 weeks old. We did exactly the same thing. 3 pots of Astrophytum per soil type, 25 seeds each, and 1 pot each of Ariocarpus, also 25 seeds per pot. So now let's go ahead and go over all of these pots of seedlings. So let's start tray number 1, 52 weeks old. This is the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. It is the worst performer out of all 12 of the different types of soils. And we kind of knew this fairly early on in the experiment. Which leads to why we tried some more stuff in tray number 2 to see if this soil can be used. And the answer is yes, it can be. You just don't want to use it straight out of the bag. So once again, I do have numbers that we will go over after we look at all the seedlings, and then you can see exactly on the quantitative side how many seedlings we still have, as of today. So this is the pot that has the most seedlings that are still alive in the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. You can just see in general, they don't look very happy. They're kind of desiccated. Even if I water them, they kind of remain that way. Here's another pot. Here's the last pot, which you can barely even see it, but there are a few seedlings in there. They're just really unhappy and they blend like straight into the soil itself. Now, disclaimer is that any conclusions that I make, again, is just with respect to what I saw in my growing conditions in this particular experiment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will see the same thing if you try the same experiment. So do take everything I say, any conclusions I make, with a grain of salt. Even for myself, if I were to repeat this experiment exactly the same again, I don't know if I would get the same results. So just keep that in mind. So that was the first type of soil in tray number 1. The second type of soil was using the Rob Romero mix. And the Rob Romero mix consists of mushroom compost, pumice, and your native soil. And I do recommend that you go back to episode number 1 to see the exact composition of this mix. In my case, the native soil in my yard is a very clay-heavy soil. Very, very dense, not the best to work with. And so you'll see later on that actually the numbers on the Rob Romero mix is actually quite good. But as you can see, the size of the seedlings is noticeably smaller than its neighbors behind it. But at 1 year old, they're starting to, really look like something. But they're definitely smaller. Let me see if I can see. This is the Rob Romero pot. You can even kind of see it against the Miracle-Gro seed starter with Miracle-Gro-Perlite, and then the other pots behind it. These seedlings are just much slower growing, but at this point you can really see the characteristics of the seedlings showing. One open question I have is that if you grow these seedlings slower, I wonder if it affects their look and maybe even their hardiness in one way or another. I have no idea. These guys I can actually keep in these pots for a little longer because they're not that crowded or overgrown, unlike these guys. But this is what the seedlings look like in the Rob Romero mix at 1 year. So the third soil in tray number 1 is a Miracle-Gro seed starter with Miracle-Gro-Perlite, which prior to this experiment, this was my go-to mix for everything. But I did notice that it wasn't the best for all genus of plants. And in this experiment, it did okay with the Astrophytum, but it also didn't do the best. And you can see that at 1 year old, it's not bad, but you'll see later on the numbers. Aren't they cute though? These are also not in dire need of repotting. I can definitely leave these in here for a while longer. The fourth soil is Uni-Gro cactus mix straight out of the bag. And I'd say Uni-Gro did quite well in this experiment. You can see the numbers are pretty good in this pot, that pot, a little sparse on this one. But the size of the seedlings is really, I would say, on par with our 2 premium soils, which we will go over next. These are overcrowded. These need to be repotted. I can't wait to do that, to get them out of there. It's like one large seedling compared to everybody else. It's so interesting how they do that. This one's really cool. Right there. The last 2 soils are our 2 premium soils that we purchased off of Etsy. Once again, I do encourage going back to episode 1 if you want to see the details on these soils and the cost breakdown. Now, these 2 premium soils are definitely the most expensive out of all of these soils. But as you can see, for East Coast Camanchaca, which is our 5th soil, it did very, very well. The pots are extremely full. The seedlings are in very good shape, and they're nice and big. And later on you will see the numbers. So these 3 pots will be given away. Several of you will be winning these seedlings. You can see some really cool characteristics. Love that one. This one's 4-ribbed. Some of these have fukurayu, that bumpiness in the ribs. This pot has a bunch of cool ones too. That one, some really weird one there. I don't know if that one got damaged or something, but it's like growing kind of pups and stuff all over it. It's very weird. And there's this one. Here we've got a lot of nudums in here. And then some of these nudums that have white stripes on their ribs, which is really cool. Got a 4-ribbed here. But then these 4-ribbed, I don't know how stable they are. They may end up growing another rib at some point. It's really nice. And the last soil is the Lofo Pro Seed Starter from Mike's Rare Plants. His numbers, which you will see later, are certainly not as high as East Coast Camanchaca, but the size of his seedlings are pretty good. This is probably the largest seedling pot. Some really cool plants and weird ones in there. So those are the Astrophytum seedlings from tray number 1. Okay, so tray number 2, some of these soils were meant to test some question marks from tray number 1. So the 2 questions we had were, for the Rob Romero mix, maybe my clay native soil isn't great for growing plants. What if I used a commercial mix in place of the native soil? The first 2 sets of soil in tray number 2 is to test that theory. The second question mark we had was on the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. So we know that straight out of the bag it doesn't do very well. But what if you amend it? Does it do well? So some of the soils in tray number 2 are meant to test that question. And the answer is it does do well if you amend it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first type of soil in tray number 2 is a Rob Romero mix, but using Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix in place of the native soil component. And you can see that compared to the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix straight out of the bag, it did much, much better. The numbers are actually quite good. However, the question mark on the Rob Romero mix is that it doesn't seem to matter if the native soil was my clay or a commercial mix. These seedlings in this mix also are smaller than their neighbors in the back. So the answer kind of is that it doesn't matter. Like that clay-based soil doesn't seem to be the cause of the slower growing seedlings. And I tried a second mix of the Rob Romero mix with Uni-Gro as the native soil component, and the results are about the same. Numbers are pretty good, but the seedlings are just smaller and grow slower. So that kind of answers 2 of the questions already. The Rob Romero mix, native soil versus commercial mix, doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And then the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, yes, if you cut it down with inorganics, it does much better. So the next soils that we experimented with, I was actually trying to make the soil consistency a bit more like the East Coast Camanchaca soil. So I went and I bought a Japanese bonsai mix, which is pumice, akadama, and lava rock. And I mixed it with 2 different commercial mixes and tried growing the Astrophytum and the Ariocarpus. And on the Astrophytum, you can see these pots are so full, incredibly full. So it did quite well. So one of the mixes is Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix mixed with the bonsai mix, and you can see it did very, very well. And it means that if you use Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, which is easily found at major big box stores, it's affordable, that if you cut it down with inorganics, it can do very, very well. Look at that. How cool is that? There's a seedling in here stuck down below. I cannot wait to repot these. They're so squished. The next experiment was using Uni-Gro mixed with the Japanese bonsai mix, and you can see that the results are very, very similar. So regardless if it's Uni-Gro or Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, it doesn't matter. When it was cut with the bonsai mix, they did about the same, at least in terms of look and feel. We'll look at the numbers later. These really, this really needs to be repotted. The fifth soil in tray number 2, I was trying worm castings instead of commercial cactus mixes. So I mixed the Japanese bonsai mix with worm castings. And I would say this is not one of my favorite mixes from this experiment. I mean, the seedlings look good. I mean, their size is pretty comparable to the other soils with that bonsai mix in it that has, commercial soil in it, but the numbers weren't as good. I personally wouldn't pick this again for me, but once again, you might try this yourself and have completely different results. So for my case and the particular kind of worm castings that I used, I wouldn't pick this mix again. The sixth and final soil is using my adult cactus soil mix, which is 3 parts pumice to 1 part Uni-Gro. I just wanted to see because if it did very well, then I wouldn't have any difference between the seed sowing soil versus adult soil. I'd just use the same thing for everything. But it didn't do as well in this experiment. It did okay. The seedlings still came up. They're still growing at a nice pace, but I wouldn't pick this. I think it's too inorganic. So that is the walkthrough of all the Astrophytum seedlings from tray number 1 and tray number 2. Next, let's look at the Ariocarpus seedlings. So as you saw earlier, these Ariocarpus seedlings are still being covered under the dome with shade cloth. Because they're being covered, they don't dry out so quickly, so I water these half as frequent as I do the Astrophytum. Over the summer, I have a ceiling fan in this room that runs 24/7. But now that it's much cooler, I turn that fan off. So over the summer, I was watering these trays about once a week, and then these trays about once every other week. Now with the fan off, I still have this little fan running, but the big ceiling fan is not running anymore, so they dry out a lot slower. So I've been cutting this watering frequency in half. So let's go over the pots from tray number 1 first. We'll start with the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, which did very poorly for the Ariocarpus, so it's consistent between the Ariocarpus and the Astrophytum. Now, the seeds that I used for tray number 1 pots were Ariocarpus retusus seeds that I got off of my own plant. Tray number 2 is actually Ariocarpus retusus from a different mother plant, so the seeds are not the same between tray number 1 and tray number 2. So do keep that in mind. I didn't have enough seeds to do 12 pots of seeds from the same mother plant. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. So we can see that the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix straight out of the bag did not do well with Ariocarpus, and it didn't do well with Astrophytum. But there's still, I think, 2 seedlings left in here. The next soil mix is the Rob Romero mix, and there's actually a pretty decent number of plants in here. It's just that their size, which you can probably, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see them sticking out here, is not nearly as large as its neighbors, once again. The third soil is Miracle-Gro Seed Starter with Miracle-Perlite. It did okay, with Ariocarpus. The plants don't look as large as East Coast Camanchaca or Uni-Gro, but it did okay. The next mix is the Mike's Rare Plant Lofo Pro Seed Starter, and you can see definitely plants, kind of okay size, but also not as good as the next 2 soils that we're going to go over. So let's go over the next one, which is Uni-Gro straight out of the bag, which actually did quite well. And the 6th soil from tray number 1 is East Coast Camanchaca. Look at that. This is the best Ariocarpus I have ever grown from seed. So one person will be winning this pot of Ariocarpus seedlings. Just look at that. just so clear when I zoom out. You can see how much fuller this pot is, and then the seedlings are just clearly larger than everybody else. So now let's go over the seedlings from the soils in tray number 2. Let's start with the raw bromero mix with Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix in place of the native soil. You can see there are seedlings in here. They're still alive, but they don't look the happiest. But the numbers aren't too bad. This is also a raw bromero mix by using Uni-Gro in place of the native soil component. And a similar comment. Seedlings are in there. They're alive. They may not look the happiest, but they're alive. The fourth soil in tray number 2 is my adult soil, which is 3 parts pumice to 1 part Uni-Gro. You can see the seedlings in here. Their size is better than what was in the previous 2 raw bromero mixes. Meh, doesn't look that great. The next mix is the Japanese bonsai mix with the worm castings. I mean, the size of these seedlings is not too bad. Next is the Uni-Gro cactus mix with the Japanese bonsai mix. See, numbers are kind of sparse, but the size of the seedlings is probably the best of tray number 2. And then last is the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix with the Japanese bonsai mix. Kind of similar results between these 2 pots. So it seems like if you're going to amend, it doesn't really matter if it's Uni-Gro or Uni-Gro. They're about the same. You know, when you look at this, and I mentioned earlier that some of this tray number 2 experiments was try to make that mix kind of look and feel more like the East Coast Camanchaca mix. But there were none of the soils from tray number 2 that could replicate this performance on the Ariocarpus. Astrophytum, it was closer, but Ariocarpus, we could not do this again. Now there is one caveat that I want to reemphasize again, is that the seeds in tray number 2 pots are not the same as the seeds in tray number 1. So there is that factor. So doing a direct comparison between tray 1 and 2 may not be fair. So do keep that in mind, but I'm declaring East Coast Camanchaca as the winner in the Ariocarpus experiment as well. Now let's go ahead and look at some charts, which I'm going to put up onto the screen. We're going to look at numbers for a quantitative analysis, and we'll also look at some qualitative analysis as well. So I'm going to show you a series of graphics coming up that have 2 metrics. A count, so very objective analysis of just counting how many seedlings are still alive in each of these different cactus mixes. And we'll also look at a more qualitative ranking on size and quality of the seedlings. So let's take a look at the Astrophytum from tray number 1 first. So on the left-hand side, I have a list of all 6 types of soils from tray number 1, along with the number of Astrophytum that are still alive as of today. And then in the middle, I have a chart that shows the same information, but so you can see it visually. So you can see East Coast Camanchaca wins. 70 seedlings are still alive out of 75. Pretty darn good. And you can also see that there's a tie for second place on the count, which is Uni-Gro and the raw bromero mix. So in third place, we have the Mike's Rare Plant Lofa Pro Seed Starter at 45 seedlings. Then in fourth place, we've got the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with repotting at 34 seedlings. And then in last place, which we're not surprised, is the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. That's what CCP means, at 15 seedlings that are still alive. So there are a total of 272 Astrophytum in tray number 1 that are still alive. So you can see that East Coast Camanchaca came in first place in terms of seedling count, and the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix comes in last. And you can see everything else falls somewhere in the middle. So the quantitative data is one thing, but the other factor we probably care about is the size and quality of the seedlings. So just by visually looking at the seedlings, I would say that the East Coast Camanchaca, Mike's Rare Plant, and Uni-Gro seedlings are roughly equal in terms of size and quality. They kind of tie. It's hard for me, at least when I look at them, to really tell a huge difference between the three. In second place, we have the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Uni-Gro-Perlite. Third place, we have the Rob Romero mix. In fourth place, we have the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm mix. I mean, those seedlings in that last mix they just don't look very happy. So I would say the most interesting soil here, to me, is the Rob Romero mix. On the left-hand side, it has a pretty good count. But on the right-hand side, you can see that it ranks much lower in terms of size and quality of the seedlings. I wouldn't say that the quality of the seedlings are bad. I don't think so. I think they look pretty healthy when we looked at them. It's just the size. They're just much slower growing in that mix. So I think that that is really interesting. But here you can see East Coast Camanchaca is the winner. Let's look at the Astrophytum in tray number 2. So same format of data for the Astrophytum in tray number 2. So on the left-hand side, we look at the count of seedlings. And here the numbers don't vary as widely as the count from tray number 1. So in first place in terms of count is the Rob Romero mix with the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm mix as the native soil component at 61 seedlings that are still alive. Second place is the Uni-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm mix with the bonsai mix at 60 seedlings. Third place is the Rob Romero mix with Uni-Gro Cactus mix, 59 seedlings. Fourth place is the Uni-Gro Cactus mix with the bonsai mix, 55 seedlings. Fifth place is my adult soil, which again is 3 parts pumice to 1 part Uni-Gro. That's at 45 seedlings. And then in last place is the worm castings with the bonsai mix at 42 seedlings that are still alive. But once again, you can see that that variation is considerably smaller than what we saw in tray number 1. And I would say that the first 4 soils are basically on par, from 55 to 61 seedlings. To me, that's roughly the same. And you can see once again here that Rob Romero's mix did very well in terms of the numbers. So in terms of the size and quality rankings, when I eyeballed the seedlings, they're actually kind of just broken into 2 groups. The ones that did the best in terms of size and quality of seedlings was basically everything except the Rob Romero mix. And the 2 pots of the Rob Romero mix Astrophytum are just smaller than the other 4 soils. So that's how I've broken up the 2. And, this is consistent with the observations from tray number 1 as well. So next I'm going to show you the quantitative data with tray 1 and tray 2 together. This is the whole reason why we even tried tray number 2 anyway. So on the right-hand side, you can see a chart that has 2 colors. All the blue bars are the seedlings from tray number 1. All the red bars are the seedlings from tray number 2. So you can see that those experiments that we tried in tray number 2 did boost numbers compared to tray number 1. We got 4 of the soils from tray number 2 that are getting closer to the East Coast Camanchaca numbers. Never quite reaching those numbers, but getting closer. So I find this to be very fascinating. And one thing is when we're looking at qualitative rankings on the Rob Romero mix, the seedlings tend to be smaller in his mix, but in terms of the numbers, it's pretty good. So I find that to be really, really interesting. Now we can't do a qualitative comparison between tray number 1 and 2 because in terms of size, they're 2 different ages of seedlings, so we can't compare them. But I think the quantitative comparison is fair. Let's take a look at the Ariocarpus. Here we have the same data for Ariocarpus from tray number 1. So on the left-hand side, we have the counts. On the right-hand side, we'll look at the size and quality ranking of the different soils. So let's start with the count. So look at this. This is very interesting. The highest count of Ariocarpus seedlings left at this point that are still alive is the Rob Romero mix. And it's the Rob Romero mix with my native soil in it. We've got 20 seedlings left out of 25. That's pretty good for Ariocarpus. In second place, we have East Coast Camanchaca at 19 seedlings. Third place, we have Uni-Gro straight out of the bag at 18 seedlings. Fourth place, we have the Uni-Gro Seed Starter with Uni-Gro Perlite. Fifth place is the Mike's Rare Plant Lofo Pro Seed Starter. And in last place, which we are probably not surprised, oh, it looks like there's actually only one seedling left, so I was wrong earlier. So Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix, there is only one seedling left. I'm actually even surprised that that seedling is still alive. That thing is a fighter. So to me, Rob Romero, East Coast Camanchaca, Uni-Gro at from 20 down to 18 seedlings are, to me, that's roughly the same. Now in terms of size and quality of the seedlings, first place is East Coast Camanchaca. Second place to me is Uni-Gro. Third place is a tie between the Miracle-Gro Seed Starter and Miracle-Gro-Perlite and the Mike's Rare Plant Loaf of Pro Seed Starter. Fourth place is the Rob Romero mix, and fifth place is the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix. So you can see that even though East Coast Camanchaca came in second in terms of the count, but in terms of size and quality, it is clearly the best. So again, it's the winner. Next, let's look at the seedlings from tray number 2 on the Ariocarpus. Okay, so for tray number 2, first place is the Rob Romero mix with Uni-Gro as the native soil component at 15 seedlings. Second place is Rob Romero, again, with Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix at 12 seedlings. Third place is my adult soil, 3 parts pumice to 1 part Uni-Gro at 11 seedlings. Fourth place is the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix with the Japanese bonsai mix at 9 seedlings. And the last place, I guess you can say, is a tie between the Uni-Gro with the Japanese bonsai mix and the worm castings with the Japanese bonsai mix. So you can see once again, Rob Romero's mix does quite well in terms of numbers for both Astrophytum and Ariocarpus. But the interesting thing again is on the right hand side when we look at the qualitative observations is that the Rob Romero mix tends to be the smallest seedlings. So it's in last place for both, regardless if it was Miracle-Gro or Uni-Gro as the native soil component. They're just the smallest seedlings. Just interesting. First place to me is a tie between pretty much all the mixes that have the Japanese bonsai mix in it. So whether it was Miracle-Gro with the bonsai mix, Uni-Gro with the bonsai mix, or the worm castings with the bonsai mix, to me the size of the seedlings are roughly the same. Second place is my adult soil. And then once again, third place. The last place is the Rob Romero mix in terms of size of and quality of the seedlings. So it's very, very interesting. I'm not really sure, to be honest, what conclusion to make out of this one. It's like the lowest count has the best size, but the highest count has the smallest size. So I guess it just depends on what you're looking for. Next, I have the chart with the seedling count with tray 1 and 2 combined. So let's look at that. So this is a table and chart showing the Ariocarpus count for tray number 1 and 2 combined. Once again, the blue bars are for tray number 1, the red bars are from tray number 2. And you can see that tray number 2 compared to tray number 1, in terms of count, they didn't do as well. It's interesting because for the Astrophytum, it did seem to make a difference, but for the Ariocarpus, not really. Okay, I'm going to go back over to the seedlings and kind of give some final thoughts. And then we'll talk about the giveaway instructions. Okay, so now, final thoughts and conclusions. East Coast Camanchaca won this seed soil battle. The last place is the Miracle-Gro Cactus Citrus Palm Mix straight out of the bag. Now what about everything else in the middle? Rob Romero's mix does very well in terms of numbers, but tends to be on the smaller side in terms of seedlings, both on the Astrophytum, oh, somebody just showed up, and the Ariocarpus. Next thought is, okay, so does this affect my soil choice, at least Astrophytum and Ariocarpus sowings? And I would say yes, because prior to this experiment, I was using Miracle-Gro Seed Starter and Miracle-Gro-Perlite for everything, but I kind of noticed that it didn't do as well on certain types of genus, so I'm not going to use that mix anymore for growing at least Astrophytum and Ariocarpus. My choice now, in terms of performance and cost, is just Uni-Gro straight out of the bag. It's so simple. I mean, we know that some of these mixes with the Japanese bonsai mixes did very well, but that's extra cost and extra complexity of having to go buy those materials and then go mix it with the commercial cactus mix. So that's one conclusion that I guess I could say. So you might ask, why Uni-Gro? Why not just use the winning soil, East Coast Camanchaca? Well, there's a price consideration there because the 2 premium soils are considerably more expensive than the commercial mixes that you can just find in stores and nurseries. Now, one big component of the cost in these premium soils is the shipping. So, I mean, that just cannot be avoided unless you can go pick up the soils locally. So shipping is just part of this cost. I don't know if maybe you can work with the sellers, and if you buy a large quantity, perhaps you can start to make the shipping cost a smaller proportion of the overall cost, maybe. But let's just consider the pricing as it is now. You know, cost is a very big consideration. If I do a very large sowing of seeds, it just becomes cost prohibitive on using the premium soils. But if I have certain seeds that are rare or difficult to grow, or something that I just really, really want to get good yield, yeah, I would use the premium soils because it gives me the best chance of getting the performance that I need for something that I really care about. So would I use the premium soils on growing all my seedlings? No. But would I consider it for using it on certain seedlings? Yes, I would. But that's just me. For you, if the cost isn't prohibitive, then yeah, why not just pick the best? That's just only my personal choice. You certainly would make the decision for yourself. Let's talk about the giveaway. East Coast Camanchaca, East Coast Camanchaca, East Coast Camanchaca, and East Coast Camanchaca. So the instructions and rules for the giveaway are essentially going to be very, very similar to the other 2 giveaways that we did earlier, I guess, in the summer. But one of the differences is that the way to enter, I've actually now created a website for Cookies Cacti, so we don't have to use the comment section of YouTube anymore for the entry. It's just so hard to keep track of. Let me go over all of that information with you now. All right, so the giveaway rules are pretty similar to the other 2 giveaways that we've had. Essentially, I am shipping plant materials again, live plants plus seeds. And so I have to restrict the giveaway to those of you who have shipping addresses within the United States, and this excludes territories. So many rules and regulations and laws that I don't want to take any risks, so I am limiting the giveaway once again in the same manner. So you must have a shipping address within the United States. I'll give everybody 1 week to enter this giveaway, so the entry period will end at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday, November 17th, 2024. And this is 1 entry per participant again, so just enter once. So here's where things are a little bit different. To enter the giveaway, I have a website now at www.cookiescacti.com. And I have a page on there called Giveaway Entry. And when you go to that page, there's going to be a form in which you can fill out your name, your contact info, which can either be an email address or an Instagram handle. So we're now no longer restricted to Instagram only. Now you can send me your email address. And then the last piece of information is the state in which you live or where your shipping address is. So those 3 pieces of information are required to enter this giveaway. So now we no longer have to deal with YouTube comments anymore. The winner selection and contact process is pretty much exactly the same as we've done before. So in this case, there will be 4 winners who will be selected through a random draw. After the giveaway entry period ends, I'll need some time to process everything. And then the way that you'll find out if you won the giveaway is I will contact you through the contact information that you entered into that form. So it'll either be through email or through your Instagram direct messaging. If it's Instagram, if we're not connected, my message will go into your request folder. So do be sure to check that. For email, it will come from my Cookies Cacti email address, which is a Gmail account. So just make sure it doesn't go into like a spam box or something like that. Once again, if the winner does not respond within 1 week of contact, I will go and select another winner and then go through this contact process again until all 4 of the prizes are claimed. One more piece of additional information is that there is no purchase necessary to enter this giveaway. I will cover all shipping costs to mail the prize to the winners, and Cookies Cacti is solely responsible for this giveaway. All right, so I want to thank every one of you who has followed this Cactus Seed Soil Battle series from the beginning all the way up until now. Every time you all interact with me through the comments, it gives me more motivation to continue stuff like this, because I feel like these subjects are a bit more esoteric. And so it's like the hardcore cactus folks who are truly interested in content like this. So I really, really appreciate it. I cannot wait to repot some of these very overgrown pots, especially this one. There's a seedling, you see that squished down in there? I really like that one. But if you paid attention to the totals on those charts, which I forgot to mention, is that there are like 590 something Astrophytum seedlings, and the 70 of them I'm going to be giving away. So there's still over 500 Astrophytum seedlings that are left. And I really want to repot these seedlings that are so horrendously overgrown. That's going to take some time, and I will plan on filming that. So it's not the end of seeing these seedlings. I will consider that we do the repotting together. That will be interesting. I'm actually thinking about leaving these Rob Romero pots as they are. They still can stay in here for a while because they're not overgrown. Because I am curious to see if their look and maybe hardiness is different when you grow them slower. It's possible. So I'll probably leave these, as they are. But all these pots that are horrendously overgrown, I will repot. I guess that's one thing that's nice about these very slow growers, these Ariocarpus, is that I think they can stay in here for quite a while longer. I will not disturb them until absolutely necessary. But you can see that at 1 year how small these Ariocarpus are still. I used to wonder why they're so expensive, buying mature plants, but once you try growing them from seed, you'll understand. I mean, at this point, the number of plants that you potentially lose over time and how slow, combined with how slow they grow, oh my gosh, I have to charge a fortune to make it worth it. You know what I mean? So thank you all very much for joining me on this series. Until next time, take care, y'all. Bye-bye.